for them to, the students for them to start.
We have to supposed to have coffee for lunch. And every time we try it.
Okay, we are ready to begin.
Thank you, Brendan. Welcome to the June 10th, 2024 meeting of the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Nad Kilani and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Burr. This meeting is called to order at 6:34 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. And we need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. If you're able to take minutes, please let me know.
I can take minutes.
Oh, thank you. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Jim Collins.
Here.
B. Dismond.
Present.
Nad Kalani.
Present.
Ava Marie Lassiter.
Present.
David Lowenstein. I did not see David. Yeah. Steve O.
Present.
Reshma Patel. Steve Perez.
Present.
And Roberto Ruiz Melendez.
Present.
We have quorum.
The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the May 13th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the May 13th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so you can speak. 3, committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. 4, all committee members, it's extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that all members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. 5, the chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on record during the meeting. With that, we can go into our first agenda topic, which is a discussion of a resolution opposing Governor Hochul's recent plan to pause the Central Business District tolling program. We have the resolution that's been sent around in advance of the meeting, but wanted to open it up for some discussion. I think most folks are likely aware of sort of the context here, but I wanted to just let folks sort of opine on really the resolution.
May I just share it up on screen?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Moment. Got it. For once. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117
There we go.
Is the resolution on your site? Is not?
Not yet,
No.
not until it's passed by a committee.
Yeah, it will be tomorrow morning,
If it's
if it's passed, if it's passed.
Me too.
Awesome. So with the resolution up, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, so you have to forgive me, my voice is, and I have a cough. So I really wish, I'm opposed to this resolution. And let me explain why. I would have proposed that the governor, if she was going to do a pause, would have done it a little before, because there are many things about the implementation of this congestion pricing which doesn't work for low-income families. And I want to go over just the fact that the MTA did not take into consideration how you reach out to people, whether you'll provide assistance, and what they could have done with data matching. And I just want to talk about 3 categories of exemptions. The first one is for low-income individuals. There is an online application that people have to go to, and my experience has been that's very hard for low-income people that are at the poverty level. And then you have to upload information that you're on SNAP, WIP, or TANF. That is very cumbersome for people without field offices or contracts with nonprofits to help. IRS contracts, a lot of other agencies do outreach. That's one problem with low income. The second problem is with your disability population. To be exempt because you are disabled, you have to have a determination of disability, unless you have had one of the permits issued by the city or you have accessorized. In order to get a determination of disability, you have to make an appointment with an assessment center. Right now, there are only centers in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. There's not one in Manhattan. They said there'll be one in Manhattan later in the summer, and there's not one in Staten Island. The third thing is for people that live in the central business district and have income under $60,000. These individuals will be eligible for a tax credit. They will have to pay for using, the access, and there'll be a tax credit at the end of the year, but there's no explanation yet as to how this tax credit will apply. I just forgot one thing on the low income. On the low income, they have to pay for 10 trips before they get an exemption for the rest. These are people at the federal poverty level. So I support the pause, but I would support the pause to really figure out how to implement this and take care of the disabled and low income. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I would say one point just to make for this committee is I think we should be focusing not on sort of relitigating the overall thoughts on congestion pricing implementation. I think there is room for how those will be implemented. And I think, the government is open to sort of tweaking it over time. It's not going to be set in stone once the first day it happens. I think the real idea here is that the government has spent over $1 billion on just getting this implemented and doing all the research and the work to get it in place. And it makes a lot of sense to really just start the program and then we can tweak it over time. I think no program is perfect, but I think when you think about the pros versus the cons, my view here is that the pros outweigh the cons and getting it started is more important. And then we can tweak it over time and get into a better spot.
So I'm going to go against what you just said. And I want to say that any program that I've done on the federal level, and I've worked with low income individuals and stuff, there's always a lead implementation time to make sure that they get the benefits. To tweaking you could do about what the congestion is, how you do this stuff, but you don't want your low income people to suffer. And I think it will at this point in time. And so I'm not questioning congestion pricing. I'm questioning the population that will be affected.
I just have a really quick
Yeah,
question,
go for
B. The studies in the 4,000
my hand
page
not showing?
Sorry, I'll get you after.
The studies in the 4,000 page environmental impact statement have shown that most low income people in New York City do not drive. So I'm just wondering where the idea that a lot of low income people are driving around in the central business district.
Well, I've gotten it from talking to people as I've gone into shops and stuff. I have an example of someone I spoke to this weekend who in driving takes a half an hour. If she has to take public transportation, it's 2 hours each way. So a lot of low income who work in shops and in restaurants find driving is significant. And they may have a joint car and a car that's a family car that they use. So I think, we're too elitist when we say what you just said.
Jim?
You mentioned the $1 billion that they spent on this thing. Part of what they spent it on was an environmental impact assessment. And I took the time to read the economic portion of it. And frankly, I put zero faith in it. It wasn't done by an economist. It was done by someone who has an MBA in general management. This sort of thing requires econometric studies. I had written, I posted testimony with the MTA board when they were reviewing it. But let's take one example. With respect to what will happen to New York City parking garages that are built in as part of a condominium or a co-op or even a rental building. Those garages generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. I would imagine that the several garages over in Stuyvesant Town generate millions of dollars. That revenue is going to disappear or be sharply reduced. Moreover, many of those garages are on what they call a good guy lease, meaning that the tenant can just walk away. And if they walk away, then you're left with a huge budget hole. Frankly, in view of the support that all of the elected officials in this district or in this neighborhood have given congestion pricing, the governor has done these folks a tremendous favor, because a lot of buildings are going to go belly up, or they will have their rents or their maintenance raised considerably. I would urge you, everyone. One of the comments in the EIA was that these garages that go bankrupt can be, quote, repurposed. Repurposed to what exactly? Hot farms? Under grow lights or something? It was the most ridiculous, unprofessional assessment I have read in several years. And I can't believe that it was passed and that people took it seriously. But apparently nobody else read it. Certainly nobody at the MTA.
Thanks, Jim.
So I join and oppose this resolution.
Steve, did you want to make comments? Your hand was raised briefly.
I wave.
Okay. Steve Perez.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, looking at the entire situation holistically, whether or not you're for or against congestion pricing, whether or not you agree with the details about how it's going to be implemented or not, I think it's a very bad look for good governance. And I'm looking at this from a good governance perspective. You had a law that was passed in 2019. 3 weeks before the law was set to be implemented, the governor decides, never mind, I'm not going to implement the law. And what does that say about the way that our government is functioning? That undermines confidence in the way that our laws are being implemented, undermines confidence in our ability to administer public services. It's mind-boggling to me. And so many people are scratching their heads, whether they're leaders in the business community, whether they're environmentalists, whether they're, the vast majority of people who are using public transportation, whether you're sitting on the MTA board, wondering, what are you supposed to do? Because what's the alternative? There is a giant $15 billion hole in the budget now that this creates. And what's the best idea that came out of the governor's office was, let's make it an IOU. And let's just put a tax on everyone in New York City. So instead of this transportation tax being shared by the users of the system, which come from Connecticut, New Jersey, or all over the world where they're driving into the New York City to enjoy all the things that our business district offers, you're saying instead we have to slap all of that money onto New York City businesses and taxpayers alone. That's the only alternative here because it's the law, folks. I hate to say it, but what you're saying is I don't want the congestion pricing, but what do you want instead? You want to pay the tax. You want New Yorkers to pay that tax. I'm sorry, I cannot go for that, and I want the law implemented the way it was supposed to be implemented. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And I'd reiterate that point of basically the idea that basically like the New York State passed a law in 2019 to mandate this congestion pricing program, and it does. I'm not a legal expert, but it doesn't feel like it's sort of the governor's unilateral ability to sort of take that down in that way. And with especially to your point, Steve, without like a backup funding source that makes sense, legislature hasn't supported that backup funding, and it's really like creating this gaping hole unilaterally when there's been a significant work by the legislature and by a lot of parties to really put this into the place it is today.
I just wanted to know if there could possibly be a compromise in this resolution rather than saying you're against her reverse of the pause, that we advocate that there be, if you want to consider it, a pilot program to see if the program works for at least 1 year and then review it in terms of the issues that have been brought up today. Is there any way that this could be reworded that we wanted to go without delay, the points that were made, but that it will be reviewed in 1 year to see if there, or resolve any problems that were foreseen, but that we wanted it to at least be implemented to see of its workability. Is there any way that we can adjust this resolution with that compromise?
I guess as I think about it, I think candidly, to me, it feels like it is like everything is a pilot program in the sense, right? Like they're going to put it in place, but if the legislature feels like it doesn't work, they're able to take it down, right? It's not like once it's in place, it's law forever. And I think there's an element of, we've seen how difficult it was to get it started here. And if it's a success, I think we don't want to have to relitigate it in a year if we can avoid that. And if it's not a success, like popular support will actually make it so the legislature goes against it. I think there's an element of just setting that up. I think the other point that I think about here, it goes back to Steve Perez's point of the MTA has this capital budget over 5 years. By making it a 1 year pilot, the other issue with that is it causes an instability where they're committing to 5-year contracts, they're committing to large construction projects, and they basically can't go to those contractors and say, look, I have the funding for 5 years. They're going to say, I have the funding for 1 year, and it may go away afterwards. So I think it partially defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do, which is allow the MTA to really reinvest in the system and make those improvements. I'm open to a discussion there, but that's just my view.
Well, to me, based on her wanting to reverse, we're starting with nothing. And there are disagreements in the public, because we are the public.
Yeah.
That even though you're saying it's everything is a pilot program, but to be able to verbalize on a date that the public would like to also review this in a year because of the pros and cons within the public, that to me, it's not only depending on the legislature, but that the public has made a statement, and we would be doing that in the resolution.
Well, the MTA is going to issue a report after the first year.
Sorry, I'll get to you after.
So perhaps, that we could talk about that in the resolution. I would be open to that, but I don't think that there needs to be a specific kind of time and date that this expires and that we have to.
Yeah. Jim?
This is suspended indefinitely. I would recommend to the governor and to the MTA that they do a proper study of the environmental impact, including an economic study that would include some econometric measurements of exactly what the net revenue effect would likely be within some range. What they did was basically say, oh, it passes. It was a horrible portion of the study. It's very poorly done in my view. And that if we're going to postpone it off indefinitely, use that time to assess whether or not what they're doing is correct. When Britain did this, when they implemented congestion pricing in London, they pulled it back after a short time, and the voters there were opposed to further expansion of it. So, and their system is much more generous than ours is. So that's what I would suggest, is that that they get somebody that has PhD economics, that can do econometrics, that can assess the actual flow of the traffic, the impact on garages, the impact on, I mean, we just had a building here in Manhattan sell for 67% less than it was supposed to be sold for. And last week, Morgan Stanley put 6 banks on credit watch because of commercial real estate concerns. You're messing with a really, really dangerous item here.
Thanks. Steve Prest.
I'm sending, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
I just-
I'm sending Brendan and Nad and what have you, the copy of the testimony that I gave to the MTA.
Sounds good. Thank you. Steve Prest.
Thank you. I just wanted to agree with Roberto's point that if we wanted to add a clause that says something about how the program is going to be adjusted in the future, I mean, that is part of the plan. So the way that it looks today is not the way that it's going to look forever. I'm be perfectly fine with that clause getting added.
Yeah.
Jim, two points. Firstly, the 4,000 page long environmental impact statement has a 200 page long section on the traffic flows. I'm sure you have taken a look at that.
Yeah,
Also,
I saw it.
page 6-79, chapter 6 of the economic conditions has a parking garage table and talks about the economic consequences
I saw
of
it.
this parking garage. So what
Right.
exactly would you be
And you're
looking-
familiar with the fact that they only addressed parking garages from 60th Street to 55th Street. There was no discussion of garages below that, or parking garages that are part of residential buildings.
That was because it was the question of the CBD tolling alternative. Specifically, it states here, we're not here to have a back and forth, but I think my main question here is, what is the understudied aspect outside of the fact that there was no econometrics, which I find dubious because there were 10 PhDs who worked on this study who are listed here. So
The person who wrote the economics portion is a MBA in general management. It's in the discussion, or in the appendix.
Okay, we don't need to
Yeah.
do this. Thank you, guys.
It was not a very well done.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim.
economist.
Thanks, Jim. Jim, thank you.
Yeah.
B.
Yeah, I don't want to go back and forth on all these issues, because I think there's people with definite opinions on one side and the other, and we see it throughout the city itself. But I guess my big question is, how do we really ensure that people who are at the low income end are not adversely impacted? And how do we really ensure that the disabled, a lot of this can have been done with data matches. The data exists in the state. I don't think the MTA is an organization that understands. I have 2 comments about organizations. They're either retail organizations that deal with the interface with the public, or they're wholesale organizations that are used for dealing with equipment and the mechanical stuff. And the MTA, unfortunately, is not the right organization to deal with benefits for low income. So that's really my major concern. I'm not going to get into the debate of the congestion pricing itself. And I thought the pause could be a good period of time to figure out how to really deal with all these issues.
Thanks. We'll get to the public portion in a bit. I just want to let the committee members have a chance to speak. Sorry, yeah, I just want to let the public committee go, or the committee go first, then I'll open it up.
And there are people obviously online.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah. So I think the one thing I just want to open the floor to is if we do want to add that clause that everyone's been discussing. Yeah.
You mean what Steve was saying?
Yeah.
That clause. Well, I'm in favor of that, but to be more specific, not that it's going to be reviewed, as you said, but it be reviewed in terms of the revenue generated as well as the environmental impact, and also what B said, as if it's a hardship, that those specific issues would be put in that clause. And then we can vote that it could go forward, if that could be put all in the clause that that Steve had suggested.
So where would this clause be? Would it be somewhere around that bottom whereas, or would it be somewhere else?
It'd probably be resolved. That we'd say resolved,
Actually, already stated.
CB6 requests that
there you go, yeah, calls upon.
the program be reviewed after, 1 year to address equitability for low-income families, the environmental impacts. I'm sorry, the other issue.
What you were saying.
Yeah.
And for those online, this is the chairwoman of the, it's not some random.
There was one other issue.
The revenue generated?
Revenue generated.
After 1 year for impacts on lower income individuals,
The environmental impacts, whether it's actually doing what it said it was going to in terms of environment.
I think we should also call out the fact that there's no centers, as B mentioned, in Manhattan for the determination of a disability. Has there been any movement on that, B? Do you know of? You're muted, by the way. B, you're muted.
In the summer,
In the
that they're
summer.
thinking of setting what up the summer. I don't know what the summer means.
Okay.
also any other groups that I've not covered, Sandy, that,
The other one we wanted was just like revenue generated.
yes.
Also disabled individuals, I think we were
Yeah.
talking about.
Absolutely, because it's the disabled individuals that have to go to these assessment centers. And they
Yeah.
could structure it differently.
Is that more
I
like,
kind of liked MTA revenue better, honestly, because it's impact on MTA revenue. I don't know if folks have comments on that specific clause. I know a few people were talking about it.
Looks
Well,
good.
Okay. I think, obviously committee members are still looking to speak. I do want to open it up to the public just to get others' voices here. Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
What I find interesting here is that I get a lot of emails, and the community board is supposed to represent the public. Yet what you are doing is representing a minority, which is to say real estate people and economic people making money here. I am intrigued that your concern is more with them than with what I have seen very early on, an outpouring of anger at this for exactly, it's Carol Rensler, and I agree with you. It's something that exactly what they said, ignoring the public in favor of a small top portion of the district.
I do think,
if we could summarize?
I'm sorry?
sorry.
I was hearing that it's a little bit hard.
Hard to
Oh, okay.
So if you could summarize.
Yeah, so, we have member of the public, and her point is that, and I'll respond to it, but her,
People,
Yeah.
and there are owners of buildings.
yeah, her point is that she feels that congestion pricing and like the implementation of it, let me know if this is a fair summary, sort of ignores the views of sort of a portion of the population that's impacted, and prioritizes like another group, effectively, the real estate.
What I'm saying is that you are a community board, which means that, at least when I was on one, that you represent the community. And what you have chosen to do here, I agree completely with B. I write about medicine, so certainly the ignoring of people with disabilities is disgraceful. And as far as the lower income people are concerned, those are the people who run your hospitals. Those are your nurses, those are the people who do the actual services. And you are taking your resolution is taking the, part of a very small group of people at the top. And I gotta go home and send out 400 emails, so, I find this fascinating, I really did.
I think what's interesting, and we have it in some of the whereas clauses, is that, Brendan, if you could scroll up, I think it's one of the first ones.
Oh, and.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. That 80, thanks. Let me say one thing. No, let me say, I'm the chair of this committee. Please let me say one thing. I think what's interesting is that when you look at the statistics, you actually see that 86% of those who work in Manhattan, like this congestion pricing area, actually do commute by transit. And when you think about and that's just statistics. And when you think about it from that perspective, that tells you that a lot of these lower income people are actually commuting by transit. So that tells you that it's not necessarily that we're squeezing out these hospital workers who are driving into the city by car. The majority of the people who work at these hospitals, who work at these lower income institutions, are actually coming in by transit. And by giving these additional funds to the MTA to do things like allowing them to fix the disability, like the accessibility of these subway stations, actually makes it better for these low income people who primarily do use transit, as demonstrated by the statistics. Thank you. I need to get to other folks. No, I need to get to other folks. We have a lot of people. I appreciate your comment.
One sentence.
Okay.
Ordinarily, people are upset with electeds, with politicians who do not respond to their constituents. Here you have a politician who responded and is paying a price for it, and this is the person that you want to diss. That's not.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Jason.
Thank you. I'll come closer to the bird.
Of course.
So I've got a couple things I wanted to address to what I had heard. B, I usually agree with you, but I have a number of disagreements on points that you raised. As it pertains to people with low income in the application process, for applying for the exemption, the discount or exemption for those with low income. I fundamentally disagree with you that people with low income will have difficulty filling out an online application. I don't think there's any evidence that people with low income don't have good access to the internet, or familiarity with computers to be able to apply for a discount. I don't agree with that as a legitimate concern. Separately, as it pertained to these comments on the disabled, a few things there. First off, the program specifically helps the disabled in that one of the main things that the program funds is ADA accessibility for the subway. The vast, as was pointed out, the 85% of households in CB6 that don't have cars, and the 86% of people commuting into this central business district who don't have cars, assuming those same metrics apply to the disabled, which I would suspect they do, if not higher, the vast majority of the disabled will be disadvantaged by congestion pricing not moving forward, because these ADA projects, which are subway systems shamefully not up to compliance in the whole system, will be delayed or not funded at all. And this project is really critical to helping the disabled to be able to take transit. Most of the disabled people who come into the district, live in the district, don't have cars, and rely on this funding for the subways to make them accessible. As it pertains to the garage concerns that Jim raised, just my opinion, I think something to consider. I would suspect most of the garages in the central business district, those are filled, especially in residential buildings, those are residents who own cars and are paying on a long-term basis to be in the garages. While it would be great if the program ended up in people forgoing their cars and not using these garage spaces, I think that's probably an unrealistic expectation. I would expect the people who own cars and park in those garages will continue to own cars and park in those garages, and the majority of them will pay a $15 congestion charge. There will maybe some reduction, but I don't think it's a correct assumption to say that garages are gonna go belly up and not be able to find people that wanna take up the spot because of the congestion charge. I think this will be an extra charge for those who choose to keep a car and choose to park a car in a garage. That's all I got. Oh, as it pertained to, was it, one more thing. As it pertained to the disabled and the access to the assessment centers, a couple points there. You don't need to go to these assessment centers if you have an existing disabled parking permit. I would expect those who regularly travel into the central business district who have a disability, many or most of them likely have a handicap permit already, therefore don't need to undergo this assessment because they would already be able to just apply without an assessment to get the applicable exception. So while I agree it's unfortunate that there's no assessment center in Manhattan, I don't think that many people are burdened by having to get that assessment done, given that they would likely have been in existing programs that will qualify them for the exception.
Thank you. Jim? Jim, you're muted. Jim, you're muted still.
Just to refute the comment, yeah, I heard Saul.
You're good now, yeah.
Just to refute the comment that that the parking is by residents of the buildings. That's not true. In our building, for example, our residents are only occupy about a third of the space. There are others, I speak to people who work in the neighborhood who park over at the Stuyvesant Town garage. And there's a number of other people that just commute into the area and park their cars in garages. So all of this can be found. If the econometric study had been, or if the economists had done the study correctly, they could have gotten all of this data very readily by just looking at the New York City parking tax data, but they didn't bother to do that.
Thanks, Jim. B?
You pay a tax to park a garage in New York City, and residents are exempt. There's some discount. I don't drive a car. I'm not all that familiar with it. I do know it exists, and the records are kept at City Hall.
Thanks, Jim.
Department of Finance.
No, we'll take
Thanks,
that,
Jim.
Jim. Thank you.
B?
Yeah, so I think we could all disagree, but my experience is based on implementing a low-income subsidy program for the Pharmaceutical Act and also the SSI disability program. So I have seen firsthand people not using the internet. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic, we had major fallout on applications because our field offices weren't open. So mine is based on my experience on the federal level and trying to reach out for benefits. And I think that's why you can see my passion, because I've always been involved in looking at how low-income people and those that are disabled can get the benefits that are due. So we all have the right to our opinion, but facts on all of these programs show things differently. Thanks.
Thanks, B. Brandon, could you pull up the public people on Zoom?
Sure. Yes. Let me expand.
Yeah. I think you can just tick through those who have their hand raised. Just go from the top. Pamela, sorry, I can't read your last name from here, but we're gonna give you permission to speak if you'd like to speak now.
Hi, this is
Hi.
Pam Gonzias from Sutton Area Community. How is everyone tonight? I can hear all of your opinions and thoughts, and our opinion as a board is our concern is for the workers in our neighborhood as well, the doormen who are not being compensated for this, who do drive in and out of New York and have done it for the last 30 years, are not being compensated. The car garage, the managers of the car garages are not being compensated as well, and they are looking for other jobs. outside of the city. And this is just a little bit of what the effect that this congestion pricing will have on our community. It's quite significant. It's also our concern too is that we have really tried hard to get the MTA to listen to us, for anybody to listen to us. And there are no exemptions for any residents in our community. The mothers that drive their children to school and then have to come back into, below 60th Street. There are substantial people that will be affected by this, and nobody's listening. There's no exemptions for anyone, other than, yes, the disabled, which we completely, of course, who wouldn't agree with it all. But the point is that nobody is listening. And that's our concern. Nobody is listening. And now that we have this Governor Hochul's decision to delay the congestion pricing, we have a period of where we can now possibly get the MTA to listen to us and to the residents and the constituents who pay taxes and vote in this community. Hopefully that they will listen. I don't really trust the fact that in 1 year, the MTA is going to come back and look at this and really have a different view of it. I think it's a budget thing. And that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. As we go through the public comment, we have a number of people who wish to speak, and I do want to give everybody the appropriate time. So we're going to give everybody 1 minute and 30 seconds to present each of their views. With that, Dana Friedman, once Brendan has the timer ready for 1 minute and 30 seconds, he can give you permission to speak.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Do you want to grant Dana Friedman?
Yeah. Dana, you should be able to speak.
Yep. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I think you might have.
Okay.
Sorry, Dana, we lost you. I think you should be able to unmute again now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I just want to
Sorry
say
about
that I'm here in full support of this resolution, that there were months of testimonies for different time periods where the public did get a chance to speak to the MTA. 68% of the comments in those public testimonies were positive and for congestion pricing. And I think the two most important things are that we spent $500 million on this already. And it is important that it does not just become money flushed down the drain. Secondly, that this was law. And I have a real issue with a government person just unilaterally saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't believe that she suddenly got a conscience and that, she, started thinking I need to do something else. I just think for whatever reason, she decided not to do this anymore. And I think it sets a terrible precedent for the governor to be able to do that. And we need to stand up for that. And that in a city of over 8 million people, it is almost virtually impossible to think about every single person's scenario. And that at some point we have to think of being a visionary and looking forward, and that stop fighting for the status quo of what Manhattan is, and think about and look at other global cities and think about what we could do in the future. And I think this resolution is a reality check on the governor's powers, and just everything seems unpopular before it's implemented, like the smoking ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Great timing too. Larry Shire. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds once Brandon gives you permission to speak.
There you go. Larry, you should be able to speak.
I think you allowed Susan to speak.
But you should have permission to.
I've given both Larry
Yeah.
and Susan permission. A lot of hand.
Okay, I'm a member of the Transportation Committee also, but recently I've had to travel up to Mount Sinai Hospital, 2 operations in the last week, an hour and a half, thanks to this goddamn congestion and the pollution that I'm breathing in. is not healthy, coming from the tailpipes of cars and from the micro plastics that come off of automobile wheels. Congestion pricing is designed to reduce the number of vehicles that come into the congestion zone and to reduce the travel time for everybody, a benefit for all of the public. At the hospital, as mentioned before, the hospital workers don't drive to work, they take public transit. This will help them. And so it's also, as mentioned, mandatory by the law. A citizen will take an Article 78 proceeding to compel the governor to do what is required. She used the word pause. She didn't say she's going to halt it. She can't halt it, but she doesn't have a plan for what's going to go forward. I would urge the MTA board to move forward, and then we will find out how to fix anything that isn't working. And if other cities' experiences, London, Stockholm, Milan, are an example that we can follow, within a year, the public will love it. And people will enjoy not breathing tailpipe smoke.
Thank you, Larry. Susan Steinberg, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to email the statement of the Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village Tenants Association to the office, so you'll have it in full, but I just want to go through the 8 points. The governor's pause is an opportunity to address issues that, in point of fact, still haven't been addressed. One thing I want to mention is calling Manhattan below 60th Central Business District is a total misnomer, because there are very large swathes of residential neighborhoods other than Times Square and the Municipal Financial District. The entire city should be asked to pay a little more. The $15 is an arbitrary taxation and cost of living increase on people who just happen to live below 60th Street. The MTA raised fares. Why, therefore, the $15 charge for congestion pricing? Taxis, Ubers, and Lyfts have been carrying onerous surcharges for months. Onerous surcharges. Where has that money gone? What has been collected? In addition, local sales and use tax totaling 8.875% already include a metropolitan commuter transportation district surcharge of 0.375%. Where does that money go? What's it used for? The city has failed to provide adequate alternatives, sufficient reliable bus and subway service, sufficient and reliable accessory. I'm getting there. 7, many residents use their cars to get to places where public.
Sorry, Susan, your time's up. We can review the statement if you send it to the board office. Thank you. Tommy Loeb, you have the floor. You should be able to unmute now and speak.
Thank you. I'm a neighbor to your south. I live in Community Board 3. We're an environmental justice community. I assume you know that in the MTA's PR, they say there are winners and losers in this plan. We're one of the big losers. And to correct some of the statements that have been said, there was not an environmental impact statement done. There was an environmental assessment done. That is very different. That, for one, doesn't even take into account the economics that are affected by this. Secondly, it did not take into account, as you know, if you've read the environmental assessment, that pollution will be increased from 10th Street to the Brooklyn Bridge on the FDR Drive due to the increased traffic, more than 8,500 cars a day. That will also affect the people who live along the riverfront in Community Board 6. How can you justify doing this to an environmental justice community, which is officially recognized, for your information, as a community that is at least 50% people of color and of low income? You belong to a larger community. You should not be supporting a plan that has winners and losers. And the losers are the people of the Lower East Side, the South Bronx, and other communities.
Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate
That was
your
a
comments.
minute and 23, by the way. You cut me off.
I trust the Zoom timer, sorry. Do you want to say anything? Okay. Heather, Brendan will give you permission to speak and you have the floor.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Great, thank you. I'm Heather Dewey Hagborg. I'm a resident of CB6. I support the resolution and would like to add a couple comments. Governor Hochul unilaterally, undemocratically halted congestion pricing, a policy that was years in the making, and that was passed democratically. Let's not forget that. Congestion pricing has been enormously effective and popular in other countries. British congestion pricing charge, £15. That's about $19. So it's more than what was proposed or what was passed here in New York. New York should be leading the United States in bringing this policy forward and reining in completely unnecessary car traffic on our streets. There's no reason in 2024 that cars should dominate New York City. The idea that congestion pricing is elitist is exactly backwards. You already cited great statistics on this. One more, only 2% of poor outer borough residents commute to Manhattan by car. That is 5,000 people. We should not base policy impacting a city of 8 million on 5,000 people. Let's put the myth that congestion pricing is not good for the low-income people to rest. We should not be suggesting some new idea. We're not legislators. We should simply state that the law should be implemented as it was democratically passed. Please, let's encourage the governor to reinstate congestion pricing as planned. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Heather. John Banzer, you have the floor. Should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I think this whole program needs to be scrapped. I'm one of the people that has to go in and out of the city, and I live out on Long Island and take care of old people and my family all over the place. And going up to see my family on the other side of the city because there's places elsewhere that exist other than Manhattan. It's going to cost me more in tolls going back home now than it is in gas. So it's already a pain to get around my own state. And as a disabled person who's lived below the poverty line for a long time, like I got into theater construction in March of 2020. I haven't had a good year in a while. There's already delivery agencies that are threatening to not deliver and charge because people can't do this. I've been a delivery guy I've done everything I can to pay bills. And I noticed that one of you noticed your doorman is a working person. I don't think any of you realize how many people keep your ancient buildings running and filled with steam and constantly repaired because you want to live in these pre-war nightmares that have to be constantly repaired. I really want you to think about how much a piece of plywood's going to cost. I don't know. I lost 3/4 of my theaters during the pandemic, and nobody seems to care. Everybody wants to eat at restaurants that are going out of business. As a comedian, it's been a nightmare. Anybody still there? I don't know if I lost it.
Just wanted to give you the space, John. Appreciate it.
Okay, I appreciate it, but this is we've never economically recovered. A lot of great talent left and is now running. New York is one of the best sharpening stones for comedy and art. There are people who were very, very talented here, and they are in charge down south and other places. They're not coming back. They're never coming back.
Okay. John,
nobody with the white power.
Actually just ran out, but
no problem. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for coming and thank you for commenting.
All right. Appreciate you guys letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa Smalley, you have the floor. You should be able to unmute now, Teresa.
Yeah, sorry, I'm unmuting. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to echo, I'm a resident of Stuytown, and I'm going to echo what they had said, that I think that although congestion pricing is forward thinking, the plan is fundamentally flawed because I'm against the idea that all of Manhattan south of 60th Street is a central business zone. The periphery of the city has large swaths of low income and rent stabilized housing, and it's increasingly impossible for low and lower middle class families to remain in this city. It seems to me that this zone was chosen simply as of like a convenience that, okay, you can charge people as soon as they get off the FDR, or, the east side or the west side, but these are residential areas. And as a small business owner who relies on their vehicle for my small construction company, I do work outside the zone. To come back home, I'm going to be charged. And unfortunately, until the MTA is functioning well enough to be able to get to places without our vehicles, we're the ones paying the price until the system is updated. Also, anecdotally, everyone I speak to says they're going to be using their cars within the zone more. For instance, if I work in New Jersey, instead of being able to take the George Washington Bridge, come down the FDR, the fastest route to my home in Stuytown, we will need to get the discount, the Lincoln Tunnel, and cross the central business zone to get back home. And I just think it's a plan that needs to happen, but it needs to be rethought. And just the easiest is not the proper answer.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Nitin, sorry, I mispronounced your name. You have the floor. You should have permission to unmute now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. So I'm a resident of the CB6 area south of 60th Street. I support that MTA should be funded. They should improve their operations. They should have all the good stuff that they want to do. I'm very much against taxing the good residents living south of 60th Street to pay for all of that. Why are they making us into a prison? And if I have to come home, I have to pay $15 every time. Why should our groceries become more expensive because they are grown outside of 60th Street? Why should all the garage attendants, the people who come to our hospitals, who take the teacher who comes to the school to teach my kid, she's going to have to pay $5,000 more every year? Where do you think that money is going to come from? Everybody who lives here and has chosen to live south of 60th Street, this is going to come from your pocket and from the pocket of people who live elsewhere, travel into the city. It's not going to come from international visitors only. If MTA is going to make $1 billion out of this, you should figure out how much of it is going to be paid by every single person on this call and every single person who lives south of 60th Street. We're not just an island, living inside our area and, going on a bike everywhere. We rely on services. We rely on things that come into our area. The governor did the right thing. She took a law which was passed undemocratically because 65% of residents opposed it.
And your time is up. Thank you so much for coming and commenting.
Thank you.
John Noble, you should get permission to speak shortly. You should be able to unmute now, John Noble.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the time. I agree with the board member who said that congestion pricing is not to be relitigated here. It's a decision that was debated ad nauseum and in depth for very good reasons and was voted on to be implemented. As a resident who lives on 43rd Street in CB6, whose health is affected by pollution due to congestion, and whose health as a pedestrian is put at risk by frustrated and impatient car users during congested periods, congestion pricing must be implemented. As a transit user, the MTA was depending on this money to fund much needed capital programs like ADA accessibility, signal improvements, and servicing of equipment to improve transit reliability. Congestion pricing must be implemented to achieve those goals. I fully support this board's resolution opposing Governor Hochul's action to delay/scuttle congestion pricing for the above reasons. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Kieran, you have the floor. You have permission to talk shortly. You should be able to unmute now.
Thank you. First of all, the guy in the white shirt, what's your name?
Nad.
Nab, and your last name?
Kilani, K-I-L-A-N-I.
Okay, thank you. I also want to reiterate that I think that, when it was democratically passed for congestion pricing, in theory, it sounded good, but these fees are astronomical. I mean, for somebody who is working for a full year and reliant on their car for transportation, and you add up leaving and coming back below the zone, you're talking about maybe $3,600 in fees. But everybody knows in order to pay that 36, you got to make like over 5,000 something or 6,000 to even pay that. And then hoping that the taxes for New York City and New York State will then reimburse you because it's not, you have to front that money. Who knows if that's going to work out? I think a lot of families are going to leave. And I think that it's going to be a domino effect. I know that we've talked, and my friends in Peter Cooper and Stye, this is just one more thing to push us over the edge, such as like the increase after COVID of being in New York City. That it's not just a low poverty line level situation that it impacts. It's middle class. It's people on fixed income.
Thank you. Your time is up, but appreciate you coming on. Giacomo, you have the floor.
You should be able to speak.
Giacomo, I think you might be muted still.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to say that I echo what people against supporting the congestion pricing said, which is that it wasn't truly a democratic process and people didn't really have a chance to vote on it. And the residents were never actually asked to vote for it. So that's all I have to ask, and I'll give back the time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, there's one other person. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Iofe, sorry. You should be able to unmute.
Hi, it's Aoife. I'm used to it.
Aoife, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Yeah, just a few points. I'm a resident in Turtle Bay, and I was extremely disappointed that the governor went back on implementing this plan. I would urge everybody to use statistics and not anecdotes. Anecdotes can be based on emotion and personal relationship and whatnot. The statistics that have been assessed, studied, etc. That's what we want to rely on, not the one doorman or three doorman. I have a doorman who took transit instead of his car, and it saved him time, and he was kind of practicing for congesting pricing. As somebody quoted, 1% or 2% of hospital workers actually take cars into work, et cetera, et cetera. So just stick with the statistics as long as they're well-founded. I would also like to emphasize, and a gentleman said this earlier, the intensity of the air pollution and the noise pollution in whatever you want to call it, the central business district, the residential central district. I walked across 3rd Avenue, 2nd Avenue, and 1st Avenue today, and it was 5 lanes of gridlock traffic. There were fire engines that couldn't get through, ambulances that couldn't get through, and not today, but often police cars that can't get through. And those are my taxes paying for those services that can't get to me if I'm not well. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. All those who have commented, on the public have commented. I want to ask if any of the committee members have any last comments before we go into a vote here. Seeing none, we will now take a vote on the motion that we've been discussing by roll call. When your name is called, please answer. Please answer A, nay, abstain, or not entitled. Brennan will conduct the vote by roll call as well as declare the results of the vote.
Okay, Jim Collins,
Nay.
B. Disman,
Nay.
Nat Kalani,
Yay.
Ava Marie Lassiter.
Yay.
Don't know if Steve O is here.
Yes.
He is? Or isn't?
Abstain.
Okay. Reshma Patel.
She's absent.
Yeah, I don't see her. Steve Perez.
In favor.
Roberto Ruiz Melendez.
In favor.
So with 4 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 abstention, this passes committee.
Thank you, Brennan.
And it will be before our full board meeting on Wednesday.
Great. Thank you for everybody who joined to participate in that conversation. Move on to the next topic, which probably less engaging to many of you, but it's a discussion of our budget and governmental affairs committee requests. Brendan, if you could pull up the committee requests. I know we discussed these last meeting. The one thing that I did want to spend some time fleshing out is the additional criteria we had added. So yeah, let's just pull those up and then we can talk about those. So if you recall, when we discussed this restructuring the budget process last meeting, we wanted to add those additional criteria of they'll come up in a second that are currently escaping me. Sorry, we'll let Brendan pull it up first.
This is what you and Jesus worked on.
Yeah, and Steve Perez as well. Yeah. And basically, these are the new criteria that we basically wanted to show. Scroll to the right, Brendan. Yeah, sorry. I know you're doing it very quickly. So it's these three of impact, community support, and feasibility. For ours, candidly, these are less relevant because we are the committee that views these, but I wanted to get these in place just to set an example for other committees to show that, we're doing this and to hopefully get them to follow through. If you recall last meeting, the reason we wanted to put these in place is that when we do evaluate the budget in the fall, we're able to get another sense of just how the committee thought about these requests. So that was really what drove these. So I think we can just spend a few minutes here and won't be as contentious hopefully as the previous topic, but really just to talk about our requests and how we want to categorize those in these different ways. So you can see we have three that we're removing. So it's really only two, the budget increase for community boards and the municipal facilities for CD6. So we can just quickly talk through those and basically get thoughts on each of those. I'm open to others going and giving thoughts too, or I can just give my thoughts on how I would categorize those.
Are we removing the noise inspector, the noise inspectors?
There.
They passed.
It was, yeah. Okay. If you put up, there's like a reason. We can talk about it offline as well.
Yeah, just to interject, one thing about this notes section, which is also relevant for committee members. We're trying to work more on linking to the conversation about removal, so just click on that link and you'll hear more of the discussion.
Thank you.
Or at least hear saying, like, the committee saying, yeah, let's remove this.
Yeah. Steve, I see your hand raised.
Found the mute button. What was the reason behind the removal of the restoration of New York City graffiti?
Sorry, I don't want to relitigate those. We can chat about those. There's like links in here of like the last meeting's discussion and we discussed those and how we thought about it. If you want to pull it down, I think it's a pretty simple thing. If you just
Just a slight confusion on is that when they say the city's budget, sometimes does that fall under NYPD? Because or does NYPD have a separate graffiti program?
Yeah, go for it.
I can answer this since, especially at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, we got a lot of graffiti service requests. So that has changed hands a couple of times in terms of who is responsible.
Right.
Pre-pandemic, it was EDC with its graffiti-free NYC program.
Right.
There were like beginning of pandemic budget cuts and nobody really dealt with graffiti, which was frankly why we had a proliferation of graffiti. Then NYPD had a program, then it was EDC again, and more recently, the Department of Sanitation has taken responsibility for graffiti service requests. So I hope that answers your question.
If you just like filter my
Clearing that up, help jog my memory. Thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, it's changed hands multiple times, so totally understand any confusion.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm happy to suggest some like buckets here and people can comment. For the budget increase for community board, I think these are like pretty subjective, so I think it's like worth it. I think feasibility, I feel like to me is like high, like it's like not a huge amount of dollars, but I think that's like when I think about something like there are other bigger issues that are going to be very difficult. So I would put feasibility high, community support like medium. I just don't think people know about it as much. And then I think impact is also medium. I don't know if folks have like thoughts on that. So it'd be like medium impact, medium community support, and high feasibility.
And by the way, I'll hit refresh later to show these tags.
Yeah, B. Sorry, B, up here. You should be able to
Can
talk
you-
now, yeah.
Yeah, it was having difficulty. So I actually think the impact can be high. And the reason being, we've gone through periods when the reverse has happened, the community board funds have been decreased, and you can't have the number of employees you can or respond to the community. So if you don't put the money in the community board, your response is diminished. So I would actually say the impact is high.
I'm good with that. Steve Press.
Yeah, I was just gonna say on feasibility, I mean, what's been the experience with getting budget increases, especially in a year where the city was cutting things? I would say probably low feasibility that they're gonna suddenly say, hey, we're increasing everyone's funding this year for community boards.
So I've experienced as treasurer over the years, stable, negative, and then they put money back in based on union contracts or merit increases. So you really need to keep it at a certain level. We started all the street fairs because we didn't think we would have the money to have 2 to 3 associates in the board. So you are right, if the city is decreasing its budget, we're not front and center. But we are small enough as 59 community boards for them to be able to keep putting money in.
Yeah, I guess it's a question of like what feasibility means, I guess, is like fine to discuss. Of like, to me, it's like it's small-ish dollars, so it feels more real than like, I know we like think about things like the Second Avenue subway and how feasible that would be. Like, to me, that is, Jason is here, but I don't want to come on the Second Avenue subway too negatively, but that feels like low feasibility. Like, to me, like that's sort of the bar I'm comparing against, but I don't have like a strong view on how we want to define feasibility.
I defer to other members with more experience about how successful
Yeah.
increasing our funding streams.
Well, you have to fight with all the other community boards. We can't just as community board 6. So we have actually had the combination of a number of boards like All Manhattan, fighting for it, or all, we never got 59, but we got a large number of them.
And I don't know, maybe Sandy knows this, but like, how are other community boards, like, are they looking for more funding too?
I don't know.
Okay,
I mean, I know some boards don't have, they're looking for staff.
right,
So that may be a funding issue.
yeah.
To pay more to the staff to attract.
I think we could probably maybe put it as medium, because I think part of, to your point, is like you kind of want like the popular momentum of other community boards as well, supporting it to make it more feasible. So maybe we do high impact, medium community support, medium feasibility.
Yeah, I could live with that.
That works for me.
Okay, cool. Anybody else have comments on that one, or we can move on to the second one? Okay, on the municipal facilities. I'll let Brandon refresh.
Yeah, I'm just refreshing so that way.
It'll reflect like we just said.
So this is municipal facilities for CD6.
Yeah.
And I'll show the tags a little bit later, just so that way people can see what it looks like.
Yeah. So I think for this one, like, I do think it's also high impact. I think just being able to like, or maybe it's medium impact, I would say, because people can zoom into the meetings. And then I would say medium community support. And then I think feasibility comes back to the same point of how you get funding here. So maybe it's medium for all of them.
Well,
yeah, B.
Yeah, I was just trying to raise my hand, because I
You're good,
can't see it totally. Okay, so let me just tell on this one, I think the feasibility is low. Because when the organization in the city, which handles space, thinks about things, it doesn't think about community boards. And we have had the experience when we were kicked out in the 40s. We moved to the police station, which was horrendous space. And now we are in very decent space. And my comment is the city never thinks of us as being part of city space. So I think the feasibility is really low.
Okay, no, that's helpful context. I'm good with medium, low. Yeah,
I did bring this up at Borough Board, as something that we should all be advocating for was space. And it got a very positive reaction, I must say. And we are trying to get space in the new Spark project. So it is something that I think borough-wide people are talking about.
Jesus.
Hi, everyone. Given as district manager, operations obviously are in my wheelhouse, and the real estate troubles that B was alluding to, I had to deal with personally for multiple years, and I can confirm that it's probably going to be a big lift. So it probably is a very difficult thing to accomplish, but I would actually argue that it's potentially high impact. Having the space that you guys have just for your committee meetings really makes things much easier. We're much more flexible in how we can schedule meetings. We don't have to go through a third party, cap in hand. Please, can you let us, meet here? There aren't any sort of weird political conflicts where maybe there's a space where the community board has some sort of business with, there's some sort of agenda item on, and there's this bizarre dance of not trying to support the item, but not trying to alienate the venue and things like that. If it's our space, we can do with it what we like. We can schedule meetings when we like. It really is a good thing to do. We cannot yet do that with full board. That's one of the things that we need. But if we had this space, a proper space, we could be host for, some of these town halls that electeds like to have. We could perhaps invite the members in for more frequent trainings or, development activities or things like that. If depending on how large the space is, since there's always need for voting facilities, it could function as that. It could really be a real place for municipal engagement. And it could really be a lot of things. So I would argue that it could be high impact.
Yeah, Brendan.
The other comment I'll make in terms of impact, to somewhat piggyback off of Jesus, but also raise another point, is for our larger meetings, like our full board meetings, especially right after we started hybrid meetings again, Jesus in particular had to spend a lot of time looking for a meeting space that fit our needs. And that's time that, if we have municipal facilities, could be spent on other things that would serve the community. So there's that side of the impact piece as well.
Yeah. Steve? Oh.
Sorry, slowed in a mute button. Just reading the agency's response, and I guess this is a question more to Jesus or the office. It does refer to a lease for office space. I know the ultimate goal would to be have our own leased space, but some of the challenges that we talk to with those who are generous to lend space to a certain period of time is they can't allocate it, frankly, because they have to staff the space for whenever it's been in use. I know it's not something we track. I don't think it's something we track, but would some of these facilities be more open to extend their space if we were to help fund not a lease, but staffing so that we can use it part-time as a community? It's like kind of a halfway point from not a fully leased space, but borrowing it because they're generous with the space, but will staff their team. And it's really honestly to be more reach that feasibility due to our limited budget, and it does have a high impact that I think we have to be creative. Just a thought.
We've gone to a lot of venues in the community, and the impression, without getting into specifics of who and what they said and where and all that stuff, the impression that I get is not that, oh, we'd gladly give you the space if we only simply had staff to cover it. It's a lot of the times we don't want to give the space over. Oftentimes it's COVID, oftentimes it's a very, very, very high fee. But if that were the issue, we could see, but even still, budgets right now are so strained that, whatever, unless that amount is very minimal, the board might not even be able to do that. Pay for staffing.
All right, just trying to be creative.
No,
South
thank you.
of a full lease.
Steve Perez.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on my thoughts on the rankings. So in terms of impact, I agree it's high impact for our board. I'm not sure it's high impact for the whole community when you look at sort of more macro against all the other needs in the community, like affordable housing, health, human services, education. I would say medium impact, just because of the way it falls against those other priorities. And then in listening to the discussion, I think in the near term, it is probably low probability or low feasibility. Hopefully over time, we can raise that profile.
I'm good with that. Should be medium, medium impact, medium community support, and low feasibility. Steve-O?
Kind of arguing against especially low impact. Having a place that people can consistently go to physically is a big deal, especially when I truly think that our staff could be doing other things truly than chasing down at the very last minute for us to all congregate. I wholly agree what Steve says. A lot of this money can go to bigger programs and bigger projects, but having been in other communities, that's been far less effective than Community Board 6. One of the crippling things is that we're unable to convene. No decisions are being made, no resolutions are being passed, no discussions are being had. And I think if it goes further constrained, if we're unable to find space, that could be the alternate of what could happen if we don't find a more consistent space. Because it's not only for us, but to welcome new people, the public, and those who are interested in joining. So I think it's certainly not a low impact. I think it's much higher than that. In my opinion, it's high impact, but just looking to us and others for more creative ways than a full lease, frankly, because of budget constraints, right?
Yeah, for me, like I think the other two are settled, but for like that impact, I don't know, I kind of go back and forth. I think, Steve, your point is kind of interesting of like, if we can't meet, we can't do anything. So the entire community board can't do anything. So then like that makes it high impact. I think.
We do have a space.
Yeah, I mean, just like for like the full board meetings though, it's kind of like, what do you do there? I mean, I guess you could all stand here, but.
Cozy.
I mean, it's consistent that nearly at least once a year, there's all of a sudden an emergency call to meeting for something, right? And in order for our votes to count, we have to all congregate somewhere, right? To be all accounted for, present. So if there's an emergency call, and it's not even as an example that could happen, it has consistently happened, at least for the few years I've been in community board, scrambling to find a space where we're able to vote on said resolution becomes more of a constraint. We already have so much to focus on and to follow up on. It's another task that's just, if you don't have a place to congregate, it's another thing to worry about. So I would say it's definitely not a low impact. It's right now, at times, it may not seem high impact, but when we do need to absolutely get together and discuss or get to making decisions, all of a sudden it's seen as absolutely detrimental and we're straining everybody just to get it done.
Thanks, Steve. I see a question from somebody who's saying that their condo has community space. I feel like it's worth just emailing the office if you have some suggestion there.
Yeah, and I will say in terms of space that for our full board meetings, we have we have 50 members and then members of the public and then elected officials. So any space needs to have. I mean, where we tend to have our full board meetings at Waterside, we tend to have about 60 to 70 chairs out. So at the very least, something in that range is what we need for our full board meetings.
Great. I mean, I know a few of us have been talking about that impact one. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Or we can like, I mean, we could just vote if people want to do that on like which way people want to go. Yeah.
At the last meeting, one suggestion was contacting the managing agents of various, I would say, condominium complexes. Is that something that's still being considered rather than individual buildings? If they, is that one of the creative ways that we're still considering, or has that been pursued in any way?
I would defer to the board office. I'm sorry, I would defer to the board office if they.
I'm sorry, I was.
When we learn of a potential venue, we go out and explore it. If you guys have ideas, feel free to send them to the office. This individual that commented in the Q&A, please send an email to info@cbsix.org with details about the potential space. There are certain criteria that a space has to meet if it's going to be appropriate for a public meeting, but we're happy to explore. But yeah, it is more difficult than it seems. We try to make it look effortless. It is not. And there are things that come up that I won't get into, even at the very last minute, that sometimes endanger these spaces. So not having to have that constantly on our plate would certainly be high impact for us. And I also agree with Steve for the community. We are not just some rinky-dink organization that is an afterthought, or that there should be an afterthought. We are built into the city charter. We are in the city charter. The city mandates us to have meetings 10 times a year, but does not provide the resources for that. So I would say that it is pretty high impact.
I think in terms of moving this forward, I think we can just honestly just vote and let people choose what they want to do here. I don't know if that's like, it's not proper parliamentary procedure, but like, I don't know what like procedure would be, but I think we can just vote on for this specific budget item. Do folks want to do high, medium, or low? For impact.
Yeah. And I can call each of your names and you can say either high, medium.
Yeah, I think that works best.
And then from there, if there's no majority, at least.
I'll figure it out.
We'll go. So I'll call your name, and when I call your name, please say either high impact, medium impact, or low impact for this budget request. Jim Collins.
Medium impact.
Okay. Pete Isman.
Medium.
Ned Kalani.
Medium.
Ava Marie Lassiter.
High impact.
Steve O.
High impact.
Steve Perez.
Medium.
And Roberto Ruiz Melendez.
High impact.
Okay, 4 members of the committee said medium impact, 3 members of the committee said high impact, so the medians win.
Okay, let's just do medium. Thank you, guys. This is for our input only. It's like not a big deal. Okay.
That helps to know what the majority of committee members.
Yeah. It was good. It was, yeah. All right. So that's the end of that topic. I'm gonna waive the chair's report. If any member of the committee has any old or new business, please raise your hand now.
I'm not a committee member, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, redistricting, is there anything that's coming up with that we know about? Is that on the radar or?
I don't personally, like, we can look, we'll follow up. I know they've been doing stuff with it, but yeah, I'm not up to date on the latest, but yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
There is a seminar that the city is doing, that's the Law Center, and I will be attending that regarding redistricting. It's happening next week. I don't remember the venue, but I've signed up for it. So presumably we'll learn more there about what's happening with redistricting.
Yeah, and I think that was sent out to everybody on this committee, so you should have that in your email as well.
We also have details of that event on the Community Board 6 website events page. And if this committee wants to potentially take that up, please do attend. Especially since, you're not really going to come up with that again for another few years, but it's better to start becoming educated on that now and forming a position on that now rather than being caught sort of on the back foot, like we kind of were this past time.
Jim?
Two things. The mayor's newly constituted Charter Review Commission is having its last hearing Thursday down in New York Law School at 5 o'clock to 8 p.m. If anybody wanted to make comments as to the operation of the charter, and that's open to everyone. I think you're limited to 3 minutes, and they will accept written testimony thereafter. The other thing is, I thought we were going to work at some point on setting up a schedule for the coming budget calendar and procedures.
Yeah, we had distributed that last meeting. We distributed that last meeting, and definitely, like, it's a living document, so if you have thoughts on it, we can resend that to you. Open to suggestions there. I know we had spent some time discussing it last meeting, and we had looked at that document but open to other thoughts, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that one yet, Jim.
Are we implementing it? Are we
Yeah,
implementing
we've shared it with all the committee chairs. But if you look at it and you're like, oh, this is missing something, this could be changed, definitely, like, let me know and we can make those updates. I think it is like the purpose of this is just to have a handy document for everybody on the community board to reference. So as we, things change, as we learn more, we want to be able to update that. So it's not sort of done forever.
With deadlines and what have you?
Yeah.
Okay. I must have missed that because I didn't see it.
All right, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
So moved.
All right. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned